Hello everyone, Blood Red's Pat Smith here with a segment on the new This is Anfield book that has been released, an illustrated history of Liverpool's matchday programmes. I'm delighted to be joined by the writers and creators Andy Marsden and David Cottrell. Hi fellas, how are you both doing?
Hi, doing well, thanks, Pat.
Good stuff. So let's jump straight into it then, shall we? If you want to give the listeners and viewers, Dave, maybe a quick glimpse and an overview of what they can expect when they buy the book.
Wow, yeah, it's the latest book that Reach Sport have published officially for Liverpool, and it's the illustrated history of the Liverpool Matchday programme. So right from the very beginnings, from 1892, when there was a programme back then, we've gone through every decade up to the present day, and we called it the ultimate time capsule for anyone with a love of LFC, and I think it'll bring back an awful lot of memories. And for the vast bulk of the information and the images, we've got my co-writer Andy, who's with us to thank. Andy is not only a Liverpool fan but an avid collector and the font of all knowledge, I think, when it comes to Liverpool FC programs. Anyway, so yeah, it's been a thing that's an ongoing thing. Took what would you say, Andy, 3 or 4 months to put together. Very much a labour of love, based on something that Andy had done in his own time as well previously, which he'll tell you about. And we're delighted with the outcome, and obviously we hope Liverpool fans and programme collectors generally will be delighted with it too.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's a must-have, isn't it, for Liverpool fans? I think a time capsule is the perfect thing you call it. I mean, Andy, you are the fountain of knowledge when it comes to Liverpool programmes. How did you come up with this idea? You know, when did it strike you one day that, you know what, there should be a book about this?
It actually took place about 5-6 years ago when I met with Liverpool themselves, the club, and Reach were there as well, and we chatted over a few ideas. One was my own book, which I promised once I'd finished that one, I'd help Reach with this one. So it took a long time for me to finish mine, so that's why there's been a big delay. But we started back in November last year, and incredibly, we've got it out already, which I didn't believe we could achieve, but we did.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing stuff, isn't it? Really quick turn on that one. So very impressive as well that it's still such a good read and that's such short of a time span, really. I mean, you know, it's so clear to see throughout. The thing that struck me, Dave, is the change we've seen in the matchday programs over the years. I mean, it's quite incredible the contrast they've come to where they are now, because it can be such a good. Obviously, Liverpool's are some of the best in the country. But matchday programs are so important, aren't they, for young journalists, much similar age to myself, of getting that really important journalism out there, because they can be amazing pieces of journalism now, can't they, in those matchday programs?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I've been around quite a long time. I've had two stints of doing the program. The one I'm doing now, which I've been doing since 2012, and then previously in 2000 to 2002. And especially if you're a Liverpool fan, which obviously I think helps, you know, you never lose your passion or enthusiasm, or you just want to come up with more ideas. You want to be original. You want to be fresh season on season. And we develop the program and the way it looks season on season with new ideas and new concepts for the cover. And even now at my age, I'm knocking on a bit, but I still write the occasional piece and really enjoy, you know, the occasional piece. And we've got a team there as well, like you say, of younger journalists and contributors who also write pieces. So it's a good school to learn your trade, I think, writing for programs and then going on to. I mean, we had people who've written for the program and gone on to be broadsheet writers, for example. So I think so. Yeah, I think our writers love doing it, and like I say, our contributors love working on it as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, as well, just stay with you, Dave. I mean, how much do you think they've changed then over the years? Obviously, because the book documents, you know, the sheer rapid change they've had from even back to, you know, the start of Liverpool's football, you know, way beyond then, with some adverts even featuring them, wasn't there, back in the day?
Yeah. Andy, do you want me to?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, Andy probably knows a lot more about it than I do, but certainly, yeah, it's changed incredibly. I mean, what I found amazing was the fact that there has been a programme since the very first season of Liverpool's existence as a football club and as a team. And obviously with Andy having his vast archive, you can look through the decades. We split the book up into decades. Each chapter is a decade, and look how it's evolved and changed. And you've had things like, you know, the war years where it's had to adapt and change because of paper shortages, for example. And that's happened twice, obviously, in the last century, and then through to the 50s and the 60s, and then the 70s, where you start to see, I think Andy will back me up on this, the more regular content, like the manager's notes, which wasn't really a thing, I think, before the 70s, not a regular thing anyway. And then you have the captain's column being introduced, and Then you've got your interviews with the players, exclusive interviews with the players. And they've always been little staples, I guess, right from the beginning, where you have things like, the fixture list for the entire weekend, who's playing whom. Then you've got your teams, your 2-team lineups, that kind of thing. Some boardroom news, as it was called back in the day. So these things have all evolved. But I think as far as we're concerned now, we just try to produce something that chimes with the club's kind of values and traditions, but reaches out and appeals to Liverpool's global fan base, because it is a worldwide fan base. So you just want to engage with all those fans and entertain them and inform them as well at the same time. And that's a job we think, we're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Andy, yourself, I mean, you've been quite the collector. When did you actually start collecting the programs, and what's the change that you've seen in them from the time you started collecting to now?
So my first, give you a bit of background. I was actually born on an FA Cup final day, so I have a bit of an affinity for the FA Cup. And funnily enough, a few years later, my dad ended up working near Wembley every day near the cup final day. So he'd always pick up a programme. So my first ever programme, unfortunately, was the 1971 FA Cup final. We don't need to talk about that, though, do we?
Oh.
And then my first match at Anfield was in 1973 when we played Leeds. And effectively at the end of that match, as Shanks put it, we'd basically won the title. It was mathematically then, and because Arsenal had drawn at Southampton. So first match, effectively the first title I ever saw. So it was quite good. And in those days, they had basically an insert called the Football League Review, as well as the programme. So not only did you get Liverpool news, but you got news of all the divisions in the Football League as well. So sometimes there'd be a picture of Liverpool, which often got pulled out by a lot of collectors or fans. And then there'd be little stories about a player, a team, etc. So it was really good to see that. But then what you see, as Dave has alluded to, a lot of the changes happened by about 78, 79, 80. We were starting to see changes which effectively brought in colour in the early 80s. And as we've just gone on, there's been so many changes right up to the present day. I mean, we can talk about the covers that Reach do now for the Champions League matches. They're unbelievable, some of the things these guys have come up with. I just can't wait to see the next one when they surprise us yet again with another one. I mean, obviously the Barca one for me was a fabulous one, not only in the context of the game, but in the programme as well. So you do see these massive changes and all the adverts, as well, as Dave said earlier. You see early adverts of tailors are always featured on the front cover of the programmes in the early years. And then all of a sudden we start to see little adverts like collect razor blade packets, send them in, and you get an autograph from one of the Liverpool players in return. And then you've got the Hickson ales as well, with your Rock Ferry, your Anfield, and your I forgot the other one, Dave.
There's Anfield with Rock Ferry, Mossley Hill,
Albert Dock, of course.
Yeah. Districts in Liverpool. There was a caricature drawn at the time. So yeah, fans of an older vintage like me and Andy will remember those. But yeah, we used to have ads for like tobacco, didn't you? Back,
Yes. I'm just having a flick to myself. There's a couple of years old for some cruise trips back in the 1940s, which is interesting ones as well. Holidays you can go on to Morocco and North Africa and places.
And emigrate to Canada as well.
Yeah.
Another one.
Yeah, and Liverpool being a big port at the time, that was happening a lot, I guess, back then. So, and hopefully there's now a bit more.
Yeah, the changes they've gone through are crazy, aren't they? Andy, I'll stay with you then, because Matchday programs, they're something that's always been a huge part of me growing up as a Liverpool fan. I'd always get a program when I was younger, particularly, even now it's still amazing to see them around. But they are under threat, aren't they? I mean, it's sort of no secret that they are trying to sort of be moved online. At some clubs, they're less popular. I think Liverpool, they're obviously very popular. I mean, what would you say to people who, are sort of against Matchday programs and would like to see them moved online? What's the counter argument to that, would you say?
I mean, for me, it's a Matchday tradition. But your counter argument to that is, well, okay, you're a bit older than the majority of fans. The younger fans, they're used to the smartphone and the internet. But if we go back, Peter Robinson, when he was club secretary, one of the things he banged on about was it's the only way of communicating with the fans. There wasn't those devices and everything in those days. So for me, I learned an awful lot. And if you look back over history, you learn so much about Liverpool Football Club that you cannot find anywhere else because it just wasn't produced. There's no magazines or anything like that. So for me, there's an awful lot of history there. And then secondly, my argument back is, well, the likes of Derby County, they quit programs a few years ago. guess what they're doing now? They've gone back to the program.
Yeah.
So for me, I think, and this is not aimed at Dave now, this is aimed at the majority of football clubs. You need to be a bit more inventive now in what you're going to portray through the program. For me, what I don't want to see is a bland bit of content, which is basically a picture of a Liverpool player, for example, with a few stats underneath, his age, how many times when he signed for Liverpool. Well, where's the content in that? You need to make the content interesting, both historical and modern. And obviously, there is the sponsors argument as well, that they've got to include all of those as well. I get that totally, but it needs to be more interesting. Some of the things for me personally, if we could get better covers, so it's not just a photograph of a player. Take Newcastle this year. They've used the Corinthian figures as if you're buying a Corinthian figure off the shelf, and it's actually portrayed on the front cover. And then some of the historical stuff that's gone in there. We played Rangers in Glasgow, obviously a fantastic result. The programme very expensive at £5 for what it was. But if you then look inside, the historical stuff in there is phenomenal. They go back to the late 1800s, 1900s, and they talk about when Liverpool first played Rangers. And they got some photographs of McKenna and stuff like that in there. Unbelievable. That information does exist. It's just having the energy to go and get it. So I think it's a balancing act to try and get interest. I get moaned at constantly by people. Why can't we do this? Why can't they do that? And that's not aimed at just Dave. That's aimed at all clubs, because some of the stuff we've seen this year has been disappointing. And you do feel, is this the beginning of the end? But we need to drive that forward. I'd hate to see the end of the Matchday programme. And I think the Derby evidence is a classic. They got rid of it, produced a magazine. Fans didn't want it. They wanted the programme. So there is an argument that, go on then, try it. But you need to invest and understand what the reader wants.
Can I come in there?
Of course you can.
Yeah, I completely agree 100% with what Andy's saying. You have to be smarter and cuter these days, because it's a print publication, and you're up against an age, a digital age now, where everything is immediate, everything's happening straight away. So you have to come up with better ideas, and you have to do your research, and you've got to be passionate about how much you put into it, which we always endeavour to do on the programme, certainly. But I do think as well, there's still that feeling. I'm not sure whether it's just amongst fans of the big clubs. I'm not sure about maybe some of the smaller clubs, that when you go to a match, when you go to Anfield, which is one of the most famous football grounds in the world, you want something tangible. You want to come away with a souvenir of it. You want to come away with something that you can flick through. It's not quite the same when it's all on social media. And also, we have the program is still seen as a vehicle from the club's point of view to get important messages across, and a primary vehicle, along with the club's official website, of course. Take an example. It was a year or two ago, excuse me, when there was the campaign for a Hillsborough law, and the club came to us and said, Jordan Henderson's captain's column. Well, he's been speaking to us and to Sir Kenny Dalglish, and he wants Kenny to take over his column for that particular issue that coincided at the time issue of the Matchday programme. And Kenny Sir Kenny wrote a guest column in Jordan's place, and it was gratifying. It was nice to think that the programme's still seen as that kind of conduit to get a very, very important message across, along with all the other media channels at the club, of course. And you find also with we've got kind of a regular column called the Anfield Review, where we'll speak to, it could be a local musician or an actor from Liverpool, actress, or a celebrity who's a fan, or an ex-player. And when you approach them to say, we'd like to interview you, or you to do a guest column in the next programme, they're delighted, 99 times out of 100, because they think, I'm going to be in the programme. It's that comment, going to be in the programme. I'm going to have to buy like hundreds of copies for my friends and family. So it does excite people to be in the programme. Then you've got the collectors like Andy, and there's a lot of them about as well, who, avid collectors and want to keep collecting a physical programme. And finally, I'd say our fans section, which is called Born and Red, where people just send in a photo and a little message. It could be like a kid's birthday, the first time at Anfield, or an anniversary, or an obituary, somebody that's passed away. It's so popular, you wouldn't believe it. Honestly, the sheer volume of requests we get in And the club can't accommodate them. It's never done like announcements really. Well, not for a few years now on the PA system at Anfield because there's so many. So they redirect it to the programme, and people, they love to have the fan requests in the programme. So I think, I can only speak from Liverpool's point of view, but it's certainly extremely relevant still, the Matchday programme at Liverpool, and touch wood, the club are very happy with what we do as their publishing partners, and long may it continue.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely beautifully put from you two. I couldn't agree more with it. I mean, I think it's such an essential part of a match day as a Liverpool fan, and it's sad to see some of the clubs struggling with their programmes. But as Andy said, look at Derby County, they got rid of it and it came back 2 years later. I mean, it just shows how important their place is in football. But we'll wrap it up there then. Thank you so much for joining me, both Andy Marsden and David Cottrell. Everyone, you can go and grab your copies from any good bookstore, LFC Retail, Amazon, anywhere online. It's definitely available. I think it's still, at the time of recording, the #1 Liverpool book on Amazon, so you definitely can't miss it. But thanks again to Andy and Dave for your time, and thanks, of course, to all of you for watching and listening along on the Blood Red podcast. We'll catch you again soon.